Nageshwar, Deputy Managing Director, State Bank of India. Mr. Ashok Anantaraman, Director International, CNH International Limited and Co-Chair of the South Asia Regional Council of FICCI. My colleague Manish Singhals and Gautam Ghosh, ladies and gentlemen. First, we hope that all of you are safe and all your family and everyone in your organization is safe and keeping well. I extend a very warm welcome and virtual greetings to everyone present here at the India-Bangladesh Trade and Investment Stakeholders Interaction. High Commissioner Riva Ganguly Das, a very warm and special welcome to you for so kindly agreeing to address this important webinar. We greatly appreciate the efforts made by you and your mission in extending all support to all of us and our fellow countrymen and bringing them back to India, and also facilitating Bangladesh and India trade and economic cooperation. I think the unprecedented global crisis has put entire world into looking at new opportunities, new equations, and of course, the socio-political and economic realities of almost all countries across the border is actually being tested at this point of time. To overcome this crisis and reascertain stronger ties with countries and the international community, there is a need for collective and harmonized response. Bangladesh and India strong bilateral economic relations, which has been enriched over the years through high-level visits and exchanges between the two countries. The countries share a cordial relationship and multidimensional cooperation in sectors of tourism, health, education, to frontier technologies of information technology and other sectors. In fact, for me personally, the last year, High Commissioner, I visited Bangladesh 4 times, and very unconsciously and very coincidentally, I always chose those times when you were traveling or you were not there, so I did not have the opportunity to meet you. But we did briefly interact when you were here for the high-level visit at that time. But thank you very much for your support and for your help and assistance in furthering this relationship. Bangladesh is India's biggest trade partner in South Asia. And I think both the Prime Ministers have agreed to create Anglo-Bangladesh CEOs Forum, provide policy-level inputs in various areas of trade and investment, and to exchange and to promote exchange between the business communities in both countries. Initially, cooperation in power, infrastructure, and skill development sectors have become hallmarks of India-Bangladesh relations. This webinar will try to analyze how bilateral economic relations between India and Bangladesh can emerge on a more stronger footing from this COVID adversity. India has launched the Urban Atmanirbhar Bharat package, but is not an inward-looking package. It is actually one of the main elements is looking at global cooperation and integration, and we believe this will open up new areas of cooperation and will also lead to the establishment of value chains which go on to supply the huge market in the immediate neighborhood by bolstering trade and investment relations. Thank you, everybody, and may I do a very special welcome to our speakers, especially Sheikh Fazl Fahim and Mr. Abdul Matlub Ahmed from Bangladesh. And may I now invite Mr. Manoj Chugh, Chairman FICCI South Asia Regional Council and President GPA Mahindra & Mahindra, for his opening address. Over to you, Manoj.
Thank you very much, Dilip. It's a great honor and pleasure. Very, very good afternoon to all of you. It is indeed a privilege to welcome our High Commissioner, Madam Riva Ganguly Das, to this important stakeholder interaction. Thank you very much, ma'am, for taking the time to be with us. I'd also like to add my warm welcome to Mr. Fazle Fahim, Mr. Matlub Ahmed, along with the other members who have joined us in this virtual interaction today. Again, a very warm welcome to Mr. Nageshwar, DMD of State Bank of India, my colleague and co-chair of South Asia Council, Ashok Anantaraman, and members of the Indian business community who have joined us for the webinar today. As you have rightfully said, Dilip, I think the relations between India and Bangladesh are very, very unique. And we not only look at Bangladesh as our biggest trading partner in South Asia, but as an important development partner. So truly, our relationship is wholesome. Most recently, of course, unfortunately, trade has got impacted due to the COVID crisis. And I think our goal is to rejuvenate and exploit the full potential, which we know for a fact requires concerted effort by the governments on both sides and also the private sector players of both countries. We've seen infrastructure gaps resulting in huge impact, which starkly, unfortunately, was visible during the current pandemic, which clearly need to be addressed on a war footing. And therefore, it is my request that all the stakeholders need to come together in order to strengthen our trade ties to address this critical issue. Also, I think there are several policy-related initiatives which can go a long way, both at national and bilateral levels, which will take our relationships to a new high. Due to legitimate health-related concerns, we know that land borders have been challenged over the last several weeks. In fact, most of our trade actually occurs, as all of you know, through the road route. And for almost 2 months, it has been, I would say, quite challenging for many of us. And it has impacted trade and exports very, very significantly. I would like to urge, and perhaps during the dialogue and discourse and discussion today, I'd like to perhaps request everyone's help on the urgent need for an alternate means of connectivity, which absolutely is critical to accelerating our relationship between the two countries on a business side. I cannot emphasize how important this is. Diversification of logistics is important and critical to trade. As a suggestion, may I leave one on the table? If we could consider looking at the old railway line linking Sialda in West Bengal to Khulna in Bangladesh via the Petropol-Benapol border, I think if we can revive this and extend it to the Padma Bridge, significant savings can occur, both in terms of time and cost, thereby benefiting trade across both our countries. In addition, we'd also like to strongly request if railways shipment of commercial vehicles can also be opened up. And I think that our request to the Bangladesh government would be to also add these to the SRO customs list. So look at alternate mechanisms of driving trade between the two countries from a logistics point of view. I would like to reiterate, and I know that we've had lots of discussions both sides, on the need to decongest the Petropol-Benapol land border issue. At present, trucks carrying goods, as you know, have to wait for days and sometimes even weeks to cross borders. In fact, more recently, we have had to make several representations and pursue with many authorities constantly to help ease the situation. Thankfully, it has become better. I'd like to assure you that the private sector will play a very active role in terms of building trade and investment by leveraging strength on both sides. As an example, I can begin with ourselves. The Mahindra Group, which I'm a part of, has been an active player in Bangladesh for 2 decades across diverse sectors. We play an important role in agricultural productivity through farm mechanization, in addition to being a key player in the automotive sector. Our generators, construction equipment, and what we do on the IT services side is well known in the Bangladesh market. We are clearly committed to scaling our operations. I'd like to take a quick minute and also share certain areas where the automotive sector, where many of our members of our Southeast Asia Council are a part of, have and would like to make a request. We see tremendous opportunities, but we believe that the issue of high import duties, particularly on passenger and commercial vehicles, come in the way of accelerating trade. We also believe that suitable retail finance needs to be enabled for such products in the Bangladesh market. We also see huge opportunity in light of the focus globally that we have on sustainability, on electric vehicles, and a good policy would go a long way in helping in this direction. In summary, we'd like to assure you that India's private sector is confident that our business relationships will gain greater strength going forward. Together, we believe that we will be able to discover new areas of cooperation, leading to a greater diversification of our economic engagement. I look forward to our deliberations. Thank you. Back to you, Dilip.
Mr. Chuk, for that. May I now request Manish, can you just moderate the session, please? Just go ahead. Manish, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Please just go ahead and moderate the session.
Sure. Okay, so just a moment. Okay, welcome everyone. Once again, welcome Rivaji. I now request, after Manoj's very crisp and actually very concrete suggestions coming in out there, may I now request Sheikh Fazal Fahim, President of Federation of Bangladesh Chambers of Commerce and Industry, to share his views on the real approach and strategy for the India-Bangladesh business going forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us at this webinar. Her Excellency Ms. Riva Ganguly Das and FICCI for organizing this event. Esteemed presence, all protocols followed. I fully agree with Excellency Manoj Cho about diversifying our trade logistics matters. This issue was discussed earlier with Honorable High Commissioner in a webinar we recently had, and the focus was to explore on rail and waterways. There are many development that has been done with the Shipping Ministry and Government of India. And after our last meeting with Ms. Riva Ganguly, I had a talk with the Shipping Minister as well to look into how we may use the waterways. For example, the one that Mr. Manoj has mentioned about using Shialda through Benapole, Petropole, and Khulna. We would be very happy to look into it. And trade logistics is a challenge we need to look into, because most of the land ports, some of the presidents of the chambers in the areas where the land ports are present at this webinar in the audience. And we are facing challenges as to trade logistics issues that has been brought up. I agree with Mr. Manoj that we need to diversify the routes that needs to be, so the goods and services can be can come through between the two countries, and we need to think a little bit out of the box as conventions has been. So for us, in terms of cost effectiveness, we believe the waterways is the best option. Then there is the railway. And I have shared with Madam High Commissioner that we would like to build on whatever has been done so far, and definitely push towards exploring and as fast as possible executing these routes in terms of passenger vehicles or any kind of goods and services that comes to Bangladesh from India, or the products that goes to India. On the point that Excellency Manoj has mentioned about the tariffs of commercial vehicles and the passenger vehicles, we believe that light engineering has a tremendous potential for joint ventures between India and Bangladesh. Majority of the goods that are coming are being produced here are the components of those passenger vehicles, and trucks are part of the components that comes from India. We maybe look into a portion of those components to be produced also in Bangladesh, to be used in these vehicles, may it be Mahindra or Ashok Leyland or Tata, that comes in here. At this juncture, as our bilateral trade stands about 9 billion, and due to COVID-19 realities, in terms of stimulating the economy, job creation and investments in joint ventures in light engineering that are part of the value chain for products and services that are produced, raw materials from India, finished good in Bangladesh, used in production in Bangladesh, re-exported to India and beyond, is a strategy that I think both the nations would benefit. There is potential there, so we would like to explore in that. On the tariff issue, we will pick that up with our customs on the commercial and the passenger vehicles. And if we can strategize a value chain approach, as I've mentioned, maybe we can look into facilitating the complete production process where there might be some tariff benefits given to products that will be coming from India. At the same time, I would like to emphasize, which I've shared with Her Excellency earlier in a communication, that over the last decade, our leadership is building on the humane relationship that India and Bangladesh have, which is tied in heritage, culture, and our long history of humane cooperation. And we have come a long way over the last 4 or 5 years, 9 years, where back then bilateral trade was about 3 billion, and now it stands at 9 billion plus. And there are some issues in LC that has been shared. LC facilities, procurements that Bangladesh does from other parts of the world, which if we do it from India, and the deferred LC can be allowed to 240%, some of our industries' procurement can increase up till 30%. At the same time, Excellency Manoj has touched on the infrastructure, where there are certain NTBs at the land borders, as well as infrastructure issues. I'm sure through the private and public engagement, we would be able to tap into not the challenges, but the opportunities that lies in these areas. So with that note, I will end here, and thank you for having me. I look forward to be enlightened by our esteemed speakers.
Thank you, Sheikh Fahim. I think you made a good point when you spoke of Bangladesh and India looking at being part of each other's value chains. I think that suggestion is well taken, but at the same time, the border issues will have to be also taken care of much greater, because any global value chain does require a lot of trade to happen across the borders. I would now request Mr. Venkatesh Nageshwar, Deputy Managing Director of International Banking Group, State Bank of India, to share his perspective as to finance, which is always a very coveted commodity, how that is shaping up to promote India and Bangladesh trade and maybe take it much beyond the
Good afternoon,
9 billion level we are.
Dilip Chinoy from Vicky. How are you?
Excellency, Madam
I'm in
Riva
Delhi,
Vistas,
at home.
my fellow speakers, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Good afternoon to all of you. First of all, thank you very much for having me here in this particular very important seminar. We all realize that this is an unprecedented situation, which, though triggered by a health crisis, has manifested into a business, economic, and employment crisis of a magnitude we have never seen before, and hopefully should not see in the future. This I consider as the blackest of the black swan events in the history of mankind. We have seen the way in which Bangladesh has progressed. They have made a remarkable progress in reducing poverty, supported by sustained economic growth. In parallel, life expectancy, literacy rates, and per capita food production has increased significantly. The progress was underpinned by steady growth of the GDP, which averaged around 6.5% in the last decade, which is envied by many of the countries. The country has pursued its export-oriented industrialization, with exports touching almost $45 billion. And the RMG and remittances generated almost $50 billion in the year 2019. Well, the COVID impact has definitely had a major impact on the entire, not just the Bangladesh, but across the globe. Because the numbers that we are looking at, uh, be it in India, we are looking at negative growth. Globally, also we're looking at negative growth. And in respect of Bangladesh, also there is expected to decline by 3.8%. The fiscal deficit is expected to widen over to 6% of the GDP. And the major impact, as my previous speakers have mentioned, the export-oriented industries are going to lose they're going to lose their confirmed orders. As a foreign counterparts, businesses are also stopped. Realization of export proceeds gets delayed. Most of the businesses have suspended their business operations due to lockdown. Remittance flows has already come down, which is one of the important things. Not just, I'm not talking about Bangladesh alone. We're talking about globally, even India, we did witness the reduction in the remittances. Buying power has, as well as the income of individual is constrained. So during this particular period, one thing that I take pride, State Bank of India, is that we were available globally all these days of lockdown, serving our valuable customers. 98% of our branches remained operational, 90% of ATMs, 91% of my alternate channels worked seamlessly to serve 440 million customers. We have changed the bank from running the bank from a fixed to flexi or work from anywhere facility. In Bangladesh, we have 3 offices and 15 IVAC centers. We we were operating here since 1975, and here too we provided uninterrupted service on all the days the regulator and the local authorities permitted. We are employing 19 local-based offices, and during the lockdown, we permitted 50% of the staff to work from home and rest following all necessary COVID-related protocols. Bangladesh operations has a balance sheet size of more than $500 million distributed between the customer, credit, and the investments. We also support trade and to the tune of $2 billion emanating from Bangladesh. As a part of the COVID dispensation, State Bank of India has rolled down trade loans in OBU and extended moratorium repayment of term loans. And in addition to that, the trade loans that we rolled over are almost to the tune of $100 million, approximately for 900 bills. Like globally, like all other regulators are doing, similarly, even Bangladesh Bank has come out with various steps like regulatory forbearance to retain the asset classification, increase in the cap of IDR, reduce the CRR, repo rate has been lowered, export refinance has been given. There are various schemes. Out-of-box thinking was done by the local regulator. Out-of-box thinking has been done by local regulator. As a similarly, government has also taken various initiatives like increasing the health expenditure, expanding the food distribution and cash programs, facilitating the provision of working capital to business and farmers, export facilitation. But it is pertinent to mention here that the implementation of the stimulus package, which has been given by the government of Bangladesh, is a bit of a challenge to the banking industry. I'd just like to put forth what are the challenges which the banking is facing. We are here to support, but we would like to bring forth certain of the challenges which we are facing. And while there is a liquidity that is being provided by the government, while there is a regulator is providing all the necessary support, the credit risk is being passed on to the banks, and that is somewhere where I would request the Bangladesh bank, and we already made that request, and we would request that it be given by the regulator and the government. Some of the points which I would like to bring here is the Bank of Bangladesh may liberalize certain stringent prudential norms on OBU lending. Why we are talking this particularly is, being an imports intensive country, one of the points which our colleague had mentioned is we need to provide low cost funds to the people. And therefore, if a low cost OBU funding will help in reducing the cost of production. The BB is also capped the lending and deposit rates at 9% and 6% with effect from 1st April 2020. In a growing economy, liberal views in banking sector and deregulation of lending and deposit rates will boost the economy. So to improve the credit offtake, more particularly SME financing, Government of Bangladesh, it's better to introduce something like credit risk guarantee, which Indian government has also promoted. So that there is a support to the SME sector, while the bank will be comfortable in extending liquidity to the SME sector. If there is something like what the government of India has introduced, on the similar lines, if the government of Bangladesh also introduces the credit risk guarantee scheme, it mitigates the risk of impairment and banks will be comfortable in extending credit risk. Another thing that we're also looking at, which is a long-term request, is inclusion of ECR, that is external credit rating agencies of global presence within the purview of commitment limits, and some certain liberalization of recoveries also, because there is a possibility of some accounts becoming NPLs, and there is a need for us to go for a certain liberalization approach for the recovery of non-performing assets, allowing principal haircut on out-of-court compromise settlements to improve the liquidity and capital support to the banks and financial institutions. We in State Bank of India will remain committed to support trade between India and Bangladesh. As I mentioned earlier, it's not just that the Bangladesh branch is extending credit for the trade between the two countries. My foreign offices spread across 35 countries also extend the credit, cross-border credit between Bangladesh and other countries as well. So, bank, we are also planning to introduce a YONO, one of the most popular products in India, which is a app which allows the customers to do digital transactions in Bangladesh very shortly. I'm sure together we can overcome this unprecedented situation and return to the normal growth trajectory in future. Let us stay safe and stay healthy, and all the best. Thank you very much once again for giving me this opportunity.
I think SBI itself in the lifeline. So I now request Mr. Mutalab to share his views on what can be done and needs to be done on Indian-Bangladesh relations, specifically with regard to business. Mr. Abdul Ahmed, President, Indian-Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me out.
Yes.
I must thank Her Excellency Riva Ganguly Das, the Honorable High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh. She is incidentally also our Chief Patron of India-Bangladesh Chamber, and also the main energy behind whatever changes you find in the recent opening up of the borders, whether rail or water or rail. She has been a very, I would say, in the focal point of trying to make both the governments understand the importance of connectivity. So thank you, Didi, to have come here and join us. And I must thank also my young president of ABCCI, Sheikh Fahim. He has recently been elevated to the highest level investment forum under the Prime Minister. And he is very vocal, very active on the COVID-19 to ensure that whatever stimulus package is in the market, it reaches whoever needs it. I thank the other members, speakers, and many of our members, both ABCCI, IBCCI, and our listeners in both the nations. I thank them for joining this webinar today. COVID-19 has actually made us to rethink our position. The time has changed. The new normal has come in, where the fight between economy and the life of the people, the political decision, the economic decisions have become now at a very critical situation. So in Bangladesh, although the numbers are still rising, our government has decided to open up with all the health rules in. We have also started opening up our factories, our working. So I find more or less India and Bangladesh is following a similar way of tackling this huge crisis. But what I feel is time has come for us to think newly about the business relationship between India and Bangladesh. We have to now remove any obstacles, whether it's connectivity, whether it's countervailing duty, whether it's anti-dumping duty, whether it's high duty of Indian products into Bangladesh. These have to be now rethought, whether it is cars or whether it's raw materials. Now the two nations need to rethink its own position bilaterally. And especially our relationship has to have a new position in view of China's new face. Now, Indo-Bangla relationship, and especially India with all its other neighbors, India and Bangladesh needs to rethink its position, especially on the investment part. We know many large companies are coming out of China, and India, along with the other countries, are inviting them to invest in India. But India could look into taking Bangladesh as its partner and make some of the investments jointly in Bangladesh. Because from Bangladesh, we can export to 39 countries duty-free, including India. So the Indian companies could have a larger strength by making a few of those investments together with the Bangladesh industries. The other point that I would like to stress upon here is more than $9 to $10 billion of imports from India to Bangladesh. Now, as we know in simple economics, currencies are devalued to encourage exports. But I don't see Indian exporters passing on any of those benefits to the importers of Bangladesh. They are still holding on to the old price. What is the result of this? China is on the other side. They are taking advantage by offering at a much lower price than what India is offering. Although the Indian government is supporting the exporters through a highly devalued Indian currency, they are not passing on this to the Bangladesh importers. So at that result, what I feel that it gives more chance to the Chinese to export more to Bangladesh. You can see that they have offered us huge new opportunities. They have removed most of the duty structure for Bangladeshi goods to China. They're trying to follow the Indian style of trying to be more friendly with your neighbor. But we can understand behind the scene. So we don't want to fall in that trap. We want the Indians to come and support and be with us and shake our hands more strongly than before. And I feel that now the new opportunities between the two nations, we should look not only as India or as a Bangladesh, we should look as India, Bangladesh. And our trade and industry must work hand in hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think you've given some thought-provoking suggestions. And yeah, we probably need to look at more collaborative approach going forward for both benefit. Now, of course, we request Ms. Riva Ganguly Das, our High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh, for her keynote address. Ma'am, we would really look forward to your vision because you worked very, very intensely over the last few years while in Bangladesh. And of course, Bangladesh is ever important for us, especially since our current government really looks at the neighborhood policy very seriously. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, Manish. Good to see all of you. Mr. Manoj Chuk, Chairman FICCI's South Asia Regional Council, Mr. Sheikh Fazle Fahim, President FBCCI, Mr. Matlub Ahmed, President IBCCI, Mr. Venkat Nageshwar, Deputy Managing Director, International Banking, SBI, Mr. Ashok Anantaraman, Co-Chair, FICCI South Asia Regional Council, and Mr. Dilip Chenoy, Secretary General, FICCI. I'm absolutely delighted to be with all of you today. And I'm very glad. I would like to congratulate FICCI for taking this initiative to organize this discussion. I think it's very important for us to have more conversation amongst ourselves. And we've already heard some interesting ideas. As you rightly mentioned, and other speakers have also mentioned, that under the visionary leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, our bilateral relation has indeed transformed itself. Our Prime Minister describes it as a Shonali Adhyay, or golden chapter of our relation. We are more than friends. I think we share history, we share civilizational ties, we share a language, we share a value system. And this unique friendship is also forged in Bangladesh's liberation war. And it is not an exaggeration to say that very few countries in the world share the kind of ties, the fraternal ties that we share. Under our neighborhood policy, which follows our Prime Minister's vision of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, which basically means that we all prosper together, the Government of India accords top priority to its relation with Bangladesh. For us, it is neighborhood first, and in the neighborhood, it's Bangladesh first. In the last several years, I think we have developed close to 70 bilateral mechanisms. Every possible subject which two countries could possibly discuss, whether it is cybersecurity, civil nuclear energy, information technology, and of course the conventional subjects such as trade, etc. All these subjects are discussed between our two countries through our bilateral mechanisms. India has over $8 billion line of credit to Bangladesh, which is the largest that we have with any other country in the world. And the bulk of the projects are actually in the infrastructure sector. Of course, the current format of our meeting, where we are talking to each other through video conference and not actually meeting each other, is a grim reminder of the extraordinary times we are living under. The trade and economic activities, indeed, as you all have mentioned, so I don't want to emphasize it again, has really been seen a lot of stress. Our supply chains have got disrupted, and and also let's not forget, we are also dealing with a very, very serious health crisis. We deal with the economic problem also. The Prime Minister of India took the initiative to have a video conference as early as 15 March with the SAARC leaders. And we've been trying to we've had actually at the trade representatives and health experts video conference, where these issues were separately discussed between the SAARC nations. India has also assisted Bangladesh by providing medical supplies and protective gear in containing COVID-19. Our two prime ministers have spoken to each other, immune to what is happening all around us. The trade last year was 10 billion. Bangladesh's exports to India crossed the 1 billion mark, which was very good development. And obviously, due to the COVID problem, we cannot expect that kind of a performance this year. But definitely, as all of you have also said, that given our geographical proximity, and we definitely have a clear advantage. I'm aware of the land border problem between India and Bangladesh, and I'm aware that the closing of Petrapur-Benapur border has been something very difficult to deal with. Right from the beginning, we have been in very close touch with Bangladesh Railways, and in turn, Bangladesh Railway and Indian Railways have been in very close touch. And you're all aware that there are 4 rail links through which freight can come to India, freight cargo can come to India, can be traded. This is Petrapur, Benapur, Radhikapur, Birol, Gede Darshana, and Rohanpur, Singhabad. Now, this has emerged as a very, very critical, critical infrastructure, logistics, support during this COVID period. Starting from 9th May, 90 freight trains have come to Bangladesh containing commodities like onion, chili, ginger, sugar, rice seeds, turmeric, spices, paper, bleaching powder, maize, corn, fly ash, etc. So we've definitely moved away from the traditional items, which were largely fly ash and stones, and we have been able to bring in essential commodities. The train gets loaded wherever the commodity is, like the onions have come directly from Nasik and some from Malda. And we have seen excellent cooperation between our two railways to iron out the difficulties, the problems, and this is being done with minimum human contact. So from the hygiene and health perspective also, there is very little fear that there's a lot of people's movement or whatever. The train experiment has worked well, to the extent that Bangladesh Railways has increased its monthly allocation of freight trains by approximately 33%. For the information, those of you who are probably not aware, from Benapole Petropol, from the rail link, you can bring in every item that is otherwise allowed by road. So there is no need for an extra SRO to be issued for train, for anything to be brought by train on Benapole Petropol. The problem is that if, also in view of the COVID and in view of the problems that traders were facing, mini rakes are being allowed. So instead of 44 wagons, mini rakes of 21 are also being allowed, 20 plus, whatever. So mini rakes have also come during this period. And Bangladesh Railway has also just allowed side door container, which means that, from Benapole Petropol. So side door container basically means that, smaller items can also come. Only problem right now is that there is the facilities at Benapole. We are trying to work with NBR as well as the railways to see how the customs can be done of smaller items without, because there's not much space for destuffing of each container. So since President of FBCCI is also here, we will require your and Matlub Bhai's support also in making, trying to see how we can improve the, to have some facilities at Benapole, which will allow for the side door containers to operate smoothly. But we are working on that, and I must re-emphasize that there's been excellent cooperation, and the way the Indian Railways, Bangladesh Railways, us, NBR, we are all working together is really shows how committed everybody is to provide smooth logistics here. In the area of maritime and water connectivity, even during the COVID period, we actually signed the second addendum to our PIWTT, which is the Protocol on Inland Water Trade and Transit, and added 2 additional routes, Sonamura, Daudkandi, Rajshahi, Godagiri, Dhulian, which has got an extension up to Aricha, and 5 additional ports of call have been added. I think there are private sector people who are trying to move containers from Holdia, Kolkata to Narayanganj. I hope all this. There's a little tinkering which has to be done in rules, regulation, which I think, given the excellent friendship that exists between our two countries, shouldn't be a problem. You're aware we've also signed the standard operating protocol for use of Chattogram and Mongla port in 2019. And we were expecting the trial runs just as the COVID hit us. So, but as and when it's safer to do so, we will have the trial run on that. And that will also be a big development, I think, in our bilateral relation. So those of you who are listening on, I would encourage that, I agree that Benapole Petropol needs to be decongested, because sometimes it really takes a lot of time for the trucks to move. And for health and hygiene reasons also, I would encourage all of you to use the railways. Any difficulty from the Bangladesh side, importers are facing, please feel free to get in touch with us. Similarly, for the PIWTT routes, the dredging is also being done, and this is a good route to use for connectivity to Northeast. The goods which are coming from, the cement factories need a lot of the stones and boulders which come from India. These can easily come by the barges, and that's again, from the health perspective, is useful. with the kind of investments that Bangladesh itself is making on infrastructure development, including widening of roads, and also which India is doing in terms of through the LOC project, where several connections are coming up. One is, on the Sylhet side, Kalora Shahabaz Pool, which actually, with construction of a small point up to the zero line, can give you connectivity by train to Karimganj. On the western side, northwest side of Bangladesh, from Chilahati, which is a northernmost point now, a rail line is coming up to the border, which will give connection to Haldibari and Shiliguri on the Indian side. So it's I think trains have a lot of possibility, and the future looks quite good for rail connection, and also water connectivity has been in existence. So I would encourage people to use these connectivity that exist, and please be in touch with us in case of any issues. India is also dedicated to take the regional cooperation forward through various initiatives, including the BBIN and BIMSTEC. Bangladesh, goes without saying, is the fulcrum of India's Act East policy. Various connectivity projects, including BBIN Motor Vehicle Agreement, Asian Highway Network, and the rail network, will integrate our economies together and will propel our region forward. These meetings are being held, and for the seamless movement of passenger personal cargo movement. One meeting was recently held in Delhi, and I'm certain that once the process is through, it will be a game changer for our neighborhood cooperation. I heard from some of you some excellent ideas on reduction of duty on passenger and commercial vehicles. Bangladesh has also, those of you from India who are in the automobile sector, you would be happy to know that Bangladesh has also changed the specification for sulfur content in petrol. So that will be will open an opportunity for you all. And what was told by President FBCCI of each other being part of both countries being part of each other's value chain, I think that's really where we need to head. I heard about light engineering, and earlier at another video conference, I had heard of interest from Bangladesh side in food processing, where again, with all the connectivity that Northeast is getting with Bangladesh, I think that's an exciting possibility. I also feel that, business people on both sides are extremely stressed. All of you are having problems. I would encourage FICCI to facilitate more dialogue among stakeholders, so that we have to think maybe out of the box on solving some problems, because the traditional tools that we have had in solving commercial disputes or other issues amongst business people, I think those will not be very useful in these times, which are extraordinary times. So maybe, given the closeness that we have with each other, these extraordinary times also possibly demand extraordinary way of looking at, some of the problems, because problems will arise. Non-payment of LC, we are already facing it. There's so many issues which come up. The garment sector, the textile sector, let's have little more dialogue amongst the people who are actually doing this business, so that they can come up with recommendations for policymakers, and then the apex chambers can look at these ideas, and we can take this forward, because I really very strongly feel that a lot of problems will come because of the strength that we are all going through, the businesses are going through, and these will need a little bit of out of box thinking, out of box solutions. And anyway, to look at new opportunities, I think it's better to have, it's important to have a frequent dialogue amongst stakeholders. Finally, I would like to once again congratulate FICCI for taking this initiative. I'm really glad that all of us could meet in this format. And maybe I'm always available for any help that any of you might need. My colleagues are there, and please have more such interaction with the business community. Thank you all, and it's wonderful to see all of you. Be safe, stay well.
Thank you, ma'am. A very, very comprehensive rundown you've given on what's happening between India and Bangladesh. And I think some of the information you shared about rail connectivity and even water connectivity have been very valuable. We've taken note of your point that we'll probably follow this up with a little bit more ground level discussions, maybe either sectors to resolve some of the operating issues. Also, like you rightly said, help us to suggest some policy changes to the government. But as South Asia Council, under leadership of Manoj and Ashok, we've actually done some work last 1 year for the Bangladesh border issues. And in fact, as recently as I think end of May, when the border was closed due to some COVID regulations, we had sent some representations not only to West Bengal government, but even right down till the DM controlling the Benapole Petropole border. And eventually, I think everybody's efforts did help to get the border started again. Now, ma'am, with your permission and with permission of everyone else, if we could take some questions. The questions can come from some of the eminent speakers also who are here today. But there's one interesting query which I'm seeing on the chat box. This is from Mr. Arindam Majumdar. He's saying that he's based out of Tripura, and currently perhaps only government and PSUs can utilize Bangladesh ports to transit supplies and capital goods. Now, whether this facility can be given to traders also?
Oops.
He specified about forming a company in Bangladesh to first sort of import goods into Bangladesh and then export.
Input bulk commodities.
So I'm not sure either Mr. Matlub or Sheikh Fahim can respond, and maybe High Commissioner in case you have some insights into it.
Well, if you want me to answer, because I've
Yes,
been
please. Yes,
doing
please.
a lot of inputs all my life. First of all, importing through Chittagong or Mongla and taking it to Tripura, those are G2G levels, and I think a lot of advancement has been done, where Indian people living in Tripura can import through, can use our Chittagong and Mongla port. I remember long before when we went to Tripura with the Honorable Prime Minister, this was also talked about, and we have come a long way. I think people have started using it now. If not, Excellency may perhaps cast a light on that. The other thing is you cannot do any import in Bangladesh without a proper license. What he is writing in his chat box is, can he import into Bangladesh without any sort of load? No, you cannot do that. But if you are an Indian businessman, you want to use Bangladesh port and use Bangladesh as a transit country, right. I think these rules and regulations are there. And I don't think there is a much difficulty here. The way that we are moving, the way that our Excellency is moving, these things will become very easy as we move along.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's a good clarification. I hope Mr. Majumdar's noted that the provision does exist to use Bangladesh seaports as a transit point. Now, one thing for probably Mr. Venkat, there's a query or a suggestion on the chat box that we would probably need more banking support to Indian investors into Bangladesh. I'm not sure whether there are any constraints today, but maybe you can help to qualify or maybe guide how to go about that.
I think Mr. Sheikh is talking about electronic documents should be made acceptable by the customs and banks. I guess could be the point that which Mr. Sheikh is talking about.
Yeah, he's just added that. He's just qualified that. You're right.
In fact, we did take up the matter with because last 2 months there was no courier system at all, and the courier's entire document transfers have come to a grinding halt.
Okay.
So what we have done is, as a proactive step, in fact, State Bank of India had taken up the matter with IBA, and we also took up the matter with the we also took up the matter with SWIFT. And what we have said is we will obtain the documents at our branches, scan them and send it across to the overseas buyers, and request the overseas buyer banker to confirm. Because once I send a SWIFT message, he'll be sure that these documents are in order. And based on the SWIFT message, the buyer banker would issue a indemnity for the release of the goods. So we did make this temporary arrangement so that whatever transportation that has happened, the customers would not have any problem. So this is a small step that we have taken. And now that the things have improved, I guess there would not be any issues. But we did take proactively and we ensured that IBA issued the circular across to all banks also. And any other issue that is there, I would request Mr. Sheikh, he's our customer also. He's from, so he can send it across to us and we'll definitely take it up.
I think you addressed his query well. This is exactly what he was looking at. What I would suggest is that, since we are probably running out of time, I would request Mr. Ashok Anantraman, the co-chair for India South Asia Council, a member of FICCI, of course, to give his closing and concluding remarks. And at the same time, I would request participants, you have the email IDs of all colleagues in FICCI who invited you and got you on board. Please feel free to write to us any questions which may arise or which we may not have been able to answer right now. Ashok, please take it on from here. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for elaborating on all the various ground details with respect to the logistics issues. I think connectivity being a seamless thing is what was a serious challenge and the concern amongst all the exporters into Bangladesh. I think the various suggestions you have given has been just phenomenal. And I'm quite sure, since you are aware of the ground realities, I'm sure you'll take it to the nearest conclusion. One of the most critical things which is impacting the Bangladesh-India relations, which I would request you and Mr. Fahim to look at, is that the Indian manufacturers are not allowed to participate in tenders for construction equipment and agriculture equipment, very specifically, which has been laid down by ADB and World Bank because of something called a Human Development Index. Now, the Human Development Index, which has been captured in all those tender documents, talks about it being more than 0.8, whereas India is 0.65. And because of which, quite a few European manufacturers and the Southeast Asian, which is Japanese and Korean manufacturers, can participate. What does this lead to? Higher costs, and therefore, and also the issue of service and availability of parts. So if this aspect, ma'am, could be looked at, it would facilitate the India-Bangladesh trade in a bigger way, because as of today, close to about $60 million of agriculture equipment is getting exported. $35 to $40 million of construction equipment is getting exported into Bangladesh. Mr. Fahim, I would like to congratulate you on your elevation. I think it's been a phenomenal thing, and I wish you all the best to fight the COVID. Mr. Matlab, you talked about very specifically Indian exporters not passing on the advantage of taxes or the forex fluctuations to the Bangladesh counterparts. We in turn will discuss with our member franchises here and see to it that how we can ensure this so that Chinese entry into Bangladesh market can be stopped. The challenge which I think Mr. Venkatesh also mentioned, Her Excellency also mentioned with respect to banking regulations, LCs, that needs to be addressed. I think these are the concerns which normally all exporters have in Bangladesh because the regulations are very, very tight. But I think we've been able to address as a team all the various aspects, and the way forward is regular interaction and regular engagement, which will ensure that the exports from our side and the imports also keep on increasing. Last time when we had met in October, the figures were on the slightly lower side. The imports were lower, and I think that trade dialogues have helped out grow over $1 million. So I think let's keep up the continuous dialogue and engagement and ensure that relationships are calm and cordial, and let's stay safe and let's be healthy. Thank you very much. Manish, over to you.
I think Mr. Fahim wants to say something.
I will be very brief if you'll allow me. So I wanted to touch base on
We are unable to hear you, Sheikh Fahim. Maybe you can switch off your video
Hello?
and keep the audio on.
Sure, I'll be very brief.
Sure.
Let me see. Okay, so I wanted to touch on Excellency Venkat Nageshwar, what he said about the credit risk guarantee. March 24, 2020, after Honorable Prime Minister declared the various stimulus packages, including grants and different stimulus loans, we from FBCCI, well, our first priority was to talk to the Finance Ministry and make sure that the banking sector should not be put under any kind of pressure. So our focus was on three grounds. One was liquidity. The other was matching fund, because it's a special circumstances. So standard operating procedures should not be followed to restart the economy. And the third was for micro, cottage and MSMEs, credit risk guarantee. But this was part of the overall banking modernization process that was going on pre-COVID, including we are reviewing at the final stage of bank company law, in which the recovery issue of NPL is being implemented, as well as the distressed asset management company has been introduced. We are working on that as well. These measures was prior to COVID-19. Credit risk guarantee for SMEs are all over the world. It's a risky investment. We acknowledge that, but FBCCI over the years with our chambers and association work with banks and CSMAs where the recovery rate were 100% because the chambers and association assisted in KYC and also in recovery of loans. So building on that experience over the years, we have talked with the Finance Ministry, and the circular, Bangladesh Bank circular of April 13th was amended on April 30th to included FBCCI chambers and associations around the country to assist in KYC for good borrowers, legitimate businesses, so access to capital is there. And kindly look beyond Basel rating and internal credit rating and so forth, considering our socio-economic conditions. And as you know that 84% of Bangladesh's economy is in the informal sector. So we believe due to the COVID-19 humanitarian crisis, this is an opportunity to bring our majority of our informal economy within the formal channel. And 60% of our wealth is not monetized. So this gives us the opportunity, and we are working with our chambers in 64 districts and associations about 400 plus, through whom we have initiated this project, and we are helping all enterprises, self-employed, small agriculture, women entrepreneurs, CSMEs, to be part of not only the banks, but also there is specialized NBFIs where the government has allocated 2,000 crore to start with, to people who are returning from expats, who could not travel to their new jobs at other parts of the world. So these initiatives are underway, and we are working very closely with the government. And credit risk guarantee was initiated on March 24, 2020. However, we did not share it with our banks because they're very reluctant to lend to CSMEs. And we want them to do that because we are trying to convince them that we'll assist you in KYC to recovery, but you have to be a little human and take in the account of our social conditions and increase our informal economy into the formal sector. So in LDC graduation and SDG assessment and our overall political economic goal of 2041, all this will be affected. So on that, I will stop and thank you for the opportunity.
Sheikh Fahim, first query or a suggestion which has come is that, from some of the Indian exporters, is that probably, and maybe even Mr. Matlub may note, that Indian companies, especially the smaller ones, are suffering because the detention and the demurrage charges on the Bangladesh side have not been waived off by the government during this pandemic. I think Indian government and almost all other governments around the world have done it. So, and especially when it comes to
So, hello.
impacted all these government and review those, because otherwise that will impact trade between India and Bangladesh.
We have worked very closely with the shipping ministry, and during the COVID-19 shutdowns, all government port charges were waived. The only thing that was we are still having challenge is the shipping agent associations, which the Indian shipping ministry has waived, given directive to them to waive, and they have complied. At our end, there is a challenge that is going on, which is under process. We believe that this will also be resolved. But from the port side, CP Chittagong Port Authority, all the shipping demurrage charges were waived during the shutdown period. So maybe the exporters are talking about the shipping agents charge, the shipping line charge.
Because the query says demurrage, so it could be the shipping agents.
Manish, can I add? You're talking about not Chittagong. Chittagong, I totally agree with what he mentioned. We're talking about at demurrage detention charges at Petropol Benapol border.
Okay.
We will look into that. We will look into that.
Thank you, Sheikh. Dilip, would you just want to say a word of bye towards the end, because we missed you in between?
No, I was very much present. I was on mute and without my video. I was very much present during the thing. Sheikh Fahim, I good seeing you virtually. I met you physically in Dhaka and also when you were here in Delhi. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilip bhai. Good seeing you.
Good seeing you. Thank you, Matlab Ahmed. Again, we met in Bangladesh. Thank you very much. All the others, thank you very much. I mean, Manish, over to you. I think I don't want to take more time.
We had almost closed down till Sheikh Fahim gave this valuable input to all of us on what's happening in Bangladesh. So with these words, thanks again, Rivaji. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Can I speak for a moment?
No, we can hear the minister. Please go ahead. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, I think, Excellency, Indian High Commissioner, Mr. Riva Ganguly, and very special thanks to my president. He is working day and night for the Bangladesh business community, as well as trying to develop the relationship with international business community. And this unprecedented situation, I'm the president of Dyeing Association president. So we are importing a lot of raw yarn from India and also from China. So my association member, they are getting huge facilities from China at this moment. I think during our last virtual meeting, I spoken to Your Excellency, Indian Ambassador also, that from Indian side, the banking regulation, they are still working for 5-month deferred payment. But you see the main customer like Zara, even bestsellers, all European customers, they are taking from Bangladesh around 6-month deferred payment at this moment for this crisis period. So I had a request to Indian side to import the raw materials for Bangladesh. They should give to 9 months to 1 year deferred payment at this moment, at least for 2 years, to retain the garment business and to have a better raw materials buying from India. Otherwise, I think from Bangladesh side, raw materials purchased from India will be reduced a lot. I think this is the time, at least for 2 years, I have a request to Indian side, please speak to your bank, please create these facilities for this unprecedented situation only. Thank you for giving me time for speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Suggestion well taken. In fact, long-term credit, I think, is going to be a requirement for exporters world over. So this is a point taken, and we've taken note of it, Mr. Alamgir. So with these words, thank you once again. Thank you, Rivaji. Thank you, Sheikh Fahim, Ashok.
Thank you, sir.
Manoj,
Thank you, everybody.
Mr. Matlab.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency Ms. Riva Ganguly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fahim. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.